Oh shit, here we go again.
There are still no suspects. An associate of Lil Durk hunted and stood over while walking with his daughter. There are two things you don't want to be known for in the city: being connected to a guy that's on a lot of people's hit list and making a very disrespectful song. But being a gang member in today's world, you can easily end up as both. As I spoke on in one of my first Chicago videos, I heard a diss song become a trend on TikTok years ago, and I discovered that it was a kid named Bando Hothead. Now, two things that aren't new in Chicago are people dying after a song is released and gun trades gone wrong. All of this is alleged, but with the renegade culture of the streets, the only reason a gun trade would occur is if one or both weapons are hot. And if I need to tell you what that means, I'm not sure you'll understand the rest of this video. So already, as soon as you agree to something like this, you're setting yourself up essentially, one way or the other. There's a very haunting photo of a cop standing over Hothead at the crime scene, appearing to crack a smile. Now, I believe that as a Chicago police officer, you can become desensitized to a lot. And he could have simply been joking with another officer about something completely unrelated, as to say a homicide scene is business as usual here would be an understatement. But then again, most people in the city will tell you that the reason there aren't more arrests in cases like this is because the cops know the streets will come and get you much faster than any legal process. One example of this is someone I won't name, but if you're in tune with the Chicago scene, you know that in a certain hood there was a fist fight, one guy lost badly, and when his attacker got up and turned around, he was shot in the back. This entire incident was live streamed and is literally still on the internet today. Yet the Chicago police act like they saw nothing, likely figuring that this guy would die before they could ever bring up charges. He did not, but there's no real proof, and like most things in Chicago, we'll probably never know. THF TP is a guy that's been around for a long time, and unfortunately for him, he was both things that I mentioned at the beginning of the video. He rose to fame when he dropped a song called Bus Stop. You can always gauge how disrespectful a song is by counting how many people in the music video are now deceased. This video came out almost 10 years ago, and there are at least 6 people in it that are no longer here, including TP and Lil Durk's older brother, D-Thang. And this song is a great example of why something like this is not worth it. Durk's brother was in the video, it got over 2 million views, but no life-changing record deal came out of it. He didn't get the same chance Durk gave Von. All he got was extra fire added to his name. Now, being from the south side, the most mysterious thing about his death is that it occurred on the west side, with any part of the west side being at least 15 minutes away from the south side by car, not counting traffic, as it could take you 30 to 40 minutes. Like in most big cities, unless the police or especially the feds grab you, most people are not willing to provide witness statements to the police regarding gruesome crimes, as it still probably wouldn't lead to a conviction. Now, when TP was caught, a man claimed his wife was there and she allegedly noticed the 2 assailants eating inside with their hoods on until they spotted TP, then they ran out of the restaurant. Now, this is a claim from the internet that appears to have one major hole in it. The shooters popped out of a car, not a building, and the car immediately busted a U-turn after the shooting going past MacArthur's, the restaurant across the street. And since the public version of this video starts with the assailant's car already in the street, we don't know where it came from. Now, it's possible that these guys were eating across the street at this restaurant, but the alleged husband of the witness claimed that TP and his killers were in the same restaurant. It's also possible that these guys were in the same restaurant and they simply exited and brought the car around so they could have a clean getaway, and this could very well be true, but regardless, it remains unsolved. The main guys TP was known to be in tour with were at least a 30-minute drive away, and he's been in the streets so long that it's hard to believe they couldn't have just caught him sooner out south. And also, due to his age, I doubt that it was any guys from his generation anyway. These could be teenagers to guys in their early 20s. But the fact that it happened in front of his daughter leads me to believe that either money was involved or a very personal vendetta. And I must admit, one thing that has changed from my era to the teenagers of today is that money is actually being put up on some of these guys. Back in my day, people would lie and act like they were doing hits for $1,500 as if that was enough to take a life, but in reality, most of it happened for free, out of fear or a psychotic urge, meaning it was either this guy had to go because he was terrorizing us, or the 1 out of 10 guys in the hood that was actually bloodthirsty went on the hunt. And since this didn't happen in the upscale part of the city, nor did any kids get hurt, we might not ever have an answer. As somebody that played the streets as long as TP is unlikely to get any remorse from the Chicago police. And they also probably figured that if it's serious enough, the guys that did this to him will have their own judge, jury, and executioner in the streets. Now, Trello, also known as GGE Trello, was much younger, being only 22 years old when he died. But this guy, despite his age, had been rapping for a long time, and it makes you wonder why you hadn't heard of him. But that's because, like most rappers in the city, he didn't start to get much recognition until he got really disrespectful. But one day, guys are gonna have to learn that there's no money in rap. Obviously, there are people who make millions from it, but they account for less than 1% of all so-called rappers. The guys covering news stories on YouTube about these rappers every time they go to jail or go viral make way more money than any of them. Rapping has got to be one of the biggest myths out there, and most of these guys honestly would have made a comfortable living just making videos talking about their life and experiences, like Take Capone. But Trello came to the spotlight mostly after he and another guy dropped a very disrespectful track, but he was definitely talented though, and he didn't have to take this route at all. But losing friends to violence in the streets at a young age can turn you toward vengeance, and disrespecting the people that caused you pain while getting millions of views for it can actually get to people and maybe cause them to feel a fraction of what you feel. Regardless, you can't just move around the city freely once you go down this path. Now, a lot of people will point to one hood because he was found in an apartment not far from the area the guys he did hang out in. But the only problem with this is he was found inside of a residence. Likely not his own home, so this means he was invited over somewhere he felt very comfortable. Now, someone explained to me how a homicide can occur inside of a home and the police don't solve the crime. Well, in Chicago, there's a controversial law about mutual combatants. Regardless of if you're illegally carrying a firearm or not, the police know there are wars going on, so if someone shoots at you and you end up shooting back, and the other person doesn't make it out of that situation, you'll get let off without any charges, most of the time. But there's hardly enough room to have this type of situation occur inside of a residence. Were the police just called by someone inside the house that said they didn't know what happened? Or was he alone in the house when whoever
Texas, natural. Yes, Texas, mutual combat. So yeah, it's mutual combat. I ain't talking about that. I'm talking about. I mean, it's a stand your ground, stay. It's all
called the police arrived. You'd be hard pressed to find a block in Chicago that doesn't have cameras, so the fact that this remains a mystery would be unbelievable if it was any other city than Chicago. Now, I'm sure there's a suspect on file, but having a suspect doesn't mean there's any real admissible evidence, and evidence is hard to come by here. Now, this happened in a neighborhood I've spent a lot of time in, Bronzeville, and a big difference with Bronzeville and West Garfield Park, where the TP story took place, is that Bronzeville is partially gentrified, and some areas in it are very expensive to live in. But again, the police know more than the locals will give them credit for, and his case probably won't get taken as seriously by the police as a result. What these guys don't realize is that disrespecting the dead won't change your life. All it'll do is lead to the end of your life. When you look at a guy like Bloodhound Lil Jeff, yes, he was very disrespectful, and had he still been alive, he could have made hundreds of thousands from his music at the very least. But is that just because he's disrespectful? No. The fascination with true crime has always been a multi-million-dollar industry. Why is a show like First 48 popular? Or the entire channel of A&E? Why are there true crime channels on YouTube with over 1 billion total views? Because it makes for very interesting stories. And something that used to be somewhat uncommon is a guy doing things that could get him 100 years in prison and then rapping about it in great detail as if he knows he'll never live to see the consequences. Just being a talented lyricist and using that talent to disrespect the dead isn't enough. Just making one of the most heinously disrespectful tracks in history, with the entire song centered around one particular murder, is also not enough. Some of these guys think that knowing someone in the industry will get them a ticket out once they do enough views. But the guy they know is usually just a rapper. The guy you need to know is the one that works at the label. Look at TP. Knowing Lil Durk and appearing in pictures with him didn't earn him any opportunity. Yet as soon as King Von got out of jail, Durk put Von's music videos on his channel, giving him an instant boost. And that's because rappers pick and choose. That's why TP couldn't get the same treatment. Now, Trello was all around the city. He had money and likely could have made whatever connection he wanted. But again, rapping is a myth. No label is going to reach into Chicago and give you $1 million for being disrespectful. Even if you can show that you have more mainstream appeal, you still have to have some type of connection at the top, higher than a rapper. So most of these guys just end up dead, and the disrespectful songs they made just end up becoming a "I told you so," or a piece of mockery for the guys that didn't like them. The Bloodhounds are the only rappers out of the city with a real consistent buzz, and they got signed by some dudes from Chicago that just so happened to play the executive role and have some label money. If not for them, they would have just been more guys on a long list of people who did 1 million views and disappeared. Hothead's friends went on a huge run, but with this type of music, it's only so far you can go without label money. And now, out of the 2 most popular guys that were around him, one is in prison after likely being told on by his own friends, and the other is inconsistent, although he seems to have a good head on his shoulders. But as for
know they
guys
had
mentioned in
rap.
this
They
video,
ass ain't
we're
like-
unlikely to ever see these cases
Ain't
resolved,
nobody
at least in the
listening
next
to
10
no damn
years.
Bloodhound
And
J
yet,
Boogie.
their
I ain't
work
gonna
still
lie,
remains
bro.
on the internet for all to see. And unfortunately, it's hard to say the guys will
Niggas
ever
ain't
learn
even
from this
listening to
because majority of the time,
Q50
the dudes with any kind
Lil
of
Jeff
buzz
the
are
only
all
nigga
under
that can
19
kinda
years
rap in
old.
that shit.
So trying to learn from others' mistakes as a teenager
Lisco,
is
man,
less
but I don't
likely
even
than
know
you
if
just
his
being
ass
murdered,
really bloodhound.
and thus the cycle will just continue. The labels made a serious
Bird, I
error when
forgot
they first
Bird-
signed the
Bird
drill
has
artists,
rap
creating
too.
the false
I don't listen-
narrative
I
that they
ain't
would do it
heard a
again
Bird
off some
song,
type of organic buzz you can build. But that couldn't be further from the truth. To all you aspiring rappers out there, no matter what you rap about, you make more.
Man, y'all stay safe no matter where you at, gang. I ain't gonna lie, bro.